Okay. So I will just kickstart and say some few words, and then hand over to Georg. But just want to welcome you all for joining this on the first edition of the Masterclass in partnership with Celsius. We hope that we could, or at the end, we are able to design some good projects together with you that we can then present to the investors and put them on the ground. So that's the main goal of this masterclass. Of course, it's not in this just 3.5 days that we will be able to do everything. So you will be asking during this course to do some homework, and you will have all our support during these days. So as you see, as you have the possibility to see, we will also have invited guests, invited speakers. One is Georg from the European Commission that will do the opening just after me. Then we will have a city and two investors presenting their views, which related with the main objectives of this masterclass. I will not take more time here because I think that the most relevant is to be presented after me. So, Georg, the floor is yours. If you could uh, give us some words about the European context, that will be great.
Yes, thank you, George, and good morning, everyone. And hope it's not too boring what I'm having to say. Well, in fact, it's actually quite yeah. I feel like quite enthusiastic about this masterclass, and I will tell you why. As most of you might have heard about the European Green Deal, the renovation wave, and some other stuff, which is now sort of popping up in the next few weeks, a month, from the Commission side, and that is partly massive programs. And if we only speak about the European Green Deal, this is actually aiming at making Europe climate neutral by 2050. Now that's really a massive announcement, a massive statement. And of course that needs to be matched on the other end with proper action, proper budget, proper ideas and strategies and so on. Now, what we learned also over the past few framework programs, and now we have Horizon Europe, is that actually you cannot achieve all that only with funding. Funding is very important to trigger processes, to kickstart things. You might have heard about our lighthouse projects, where we have engaged 116 cities over time. Extremely well received, great stuff. Also stuff which is really reusable, replicable, upscalable, and so on. But of course, we want to continue not only with funding, but also with financing. And that brings us directly into today's masterclass. The Smart Cities Marketplace's main goal and target is to make smart city solutions available to pretty much everyone, to put it at the fingertips of stakeholders who have to, professionally spoken, who have to get into this smart city programming, smart city implementation, replication, and so on, who are maybe tasked by the superiors to learn more about this context in order to make cities of any size smarter and more livable over time. Now that's exactly where the Smart Cities Marketplace operates, and where we try to not only provide the necessary knowledge, the hands-on knowledge, the practical knowledge, but also match that with a proper advice when it comes to actually setting up the projects. Again, this is exactly where the masterclass is located, and it's the first time that we organize a class like this with a really classroom format to bring people closer to what is really needed to launch projects and to make them viable for financing and match that with investors' interest. So you are at the right place, and I'm quite looking forward how you will succeed to make your ideas, your strategies happening on the ground. And this is, I should say this really very clearly, this is a part also of the strategy to directly support the European Green Deal. So you are actually part of that. If you succeed with your projects, ideally with our help, then you already make a change. You already support that goal of making Europe climate neutral and making our cities more livable. So with this, I stop because I don't want to bore you. I want you to to rate you for the stuff which is coming, which is more interesting than what I'm saying, I believe. I wish you all success. I will stay around for a while, and I'm of course here to answer questions and to take part in the discussions later on. Thank you very much and much success. Thank you.
I was muted. Thank you, Georg, um, for this presentation. So I would just like to highlight some few things before we start with Judith, that will present the Smart City Guidance Package, that is the backbone of our concept of the masterclass. I would just like to go through a bit to the program now. So we will be presenting the guidance package, the Smart City Guidance Package, which is the backbone of the masterclass. And why we do it? Because we understand that we need to follow all the steps to have a strategy in place, and following these steps in order to engage with the investors at the end for the specific project. So that's the reason that we will follow this Smart City Guidance Package. So after this overview from Judith, we will have two separate sessions, or one session with two groups. We will explain that a little bit, to do some work together to see a gap analysis, to make a gap analysis with your concepts or your projects that you are aiming for, and where we are, where you are, and what is missing there. And then we will come back together with a presentation from one city that has developed a strategy. So it will be quite nice to see how that worked and what were the main difficulties, all of that, and some feedback at the end. So that's the program for today. I will not take more time. Judith, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Judith Borstboom. I'm the owner of a small company that's called Locality, with a focus on research and innovation management for smart and climate neutral cities. I liked it very much that Emilia called us teachers, because I've been a teacher for a very long time at university. So it feels back to those times, which is very nice, I must say. So I'm really looking forward to work with you and tell you about our method, and also hear from you how you can apply it in your own circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. So myself, I'm Jorge from RTA Climate Solutions, a Portuguese consultancy company, and I'm one of the matchmakers on the Smart City Marketplace. Our role as matchmakers on the Smart Cities Marketplace is to link the project developers and cities with the investors on the other side. And among other activities, we are promoting this kind of building capacity programs in order to make the projects more bankable. Georg, although you have presented, I will ask you a few words just to present yourself, since it's I will follow this order.
Yes, sure, with pleasure. Thank you, Josh. I'm Georg Huben. I'm from DG Energy. Now Unit B1, that's the unit in DG Energy dealing with local and urban initiatives and regional initiatives. So I finally arrived in the unit only dealing with cities and stuff, which is great. Um, and yes, I'm the responsible desk officer, if you want, for the Smart Cities Marketplace, but I'm also part of a, let's say, cross DG team on smart cities and communities. Yeah, so the offer is there. Should you have any question which is a bit related to commission stuff, you can, of course, pull me in and ask me things. Thank you very much. And again, much success. Thank you.
Thank you, Georg. Elko, it's your turn. You are muted, Elko.
Sorry, so I changed my background into a view on the city where I live. It's my practice of to have a different picture every day. So now you see the main square of the lovely town of Deventer. I'm not sure whether it's a smart city or a climate neutral city, but it's definitely a nice city. I work with a company called DNVGL, and I work in an area called energy systems. And what we do there is actually create roadmaps for two types of things. Decarbonization roadmaps and digitalization roadmaps. So that's basically what I represent in my company. But for the Smart Cities Marketplace, I'm one of, together with George, I'm actually one of the matchmakers trying to match good smart city or climate neutral project proposals to our private investor network. So in that capacity, I participate in this masterclass. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's good to see that you are outside of home.
Okay, thank you, Jorge. I will start sharing my screen, and it's really nice to have seen your faces and heard your voices, because that makes it much more nice for me to talk to you. So I will tell you a bit about the framework that we will use in this masterclass. Can you see my screen properly now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. I'll tell you a bit about this, the framework, the Smart City Guidance Package, and actually even more the Smart City Guidance Package summary that you have received through Sophia and Emilia. And this methodology is helping you to develop climate neutral and smart city plans. And it's a very generic methodology. You will see that later. So during this masterclass, we will use this framework for you to develop your own plans in more detail. So by filling in what you would do at specific steps. To give you a bit of background, except being a colleague of Jorge and Eelco in the Smart Cities Marketplace, I've also been active in the Smart Cities Marketplace as initiative leader in the action cluster Integrated Planning, Policies and Regulation. I just wanted to show you this briefly so you know a bit where the things are coming from. And in the Smart Cities Marketplace, we have 6 action clusters where representatives from city administrations, from research, from industry, from NGOs work together around specific topics. For example, integrated infrastructure, sustainable urban mobility, sustainable districts, citizen focus, and integrated planning, policies and regulations is one of those action clusters. There we work in 3 initiatives, one focusing from planning to implementation, upscaling, one on tools for decision making, and recently we have launched a new one on regulatory frameworks. So the people working in these networks, they do this pro bono, they are not paid, they invest their own time because they think it's important to achieve climate neutral and smart cities, and they come together on a regulatory basis. So in this action cluster, integrated planning, policies and regulations, the idea was born to develop a kind of guidance material, because it was often said that the holistic approach is very important, but what is such a holistic approach, and what should you what do you have to do then? That's not so clear cut. So we try to make that very practical. Just to give you a bit of flavor of what action clusters and initiatives do. They meet, they organize webinars, they have workshops, of course, everything now online, but they also develop ideas and produce specific material, like, for example, solution booklets that have been produced together with the Smart City Information System, where there are many cases described in the field of smart and climate neutral solutions. So we have all kinds of collaboration here. It's also development of knowledge, guidelines and tools, for example, advising on standards, and ideas are frequently put together in a kind of not an official green or white paper, but kind of ID books containing ideas how to go forward. And a couple of examples, for example, the initiative Urban Air Mobility has set up a network with 42 cities that are collaborating on preparation for drones, for example, and then not the small drones, but the big ones that can be means of transport for people. So a lot of cities get requests from companies because the prototypes are there to start services with these type of drones and don't know what to do. So in this network, they try to find out what are the regulations, etc. What are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and what needs to be done at several scale levels, local, European, to enable this in a good way, because this could, for example, be very useful for emergency services. We also have an initiatives, Geospatial Cities, that works on better use of space data. They recently had a very nice event where there were a lot of ideas who you could work with Earth observation data to, for example, detect the potential for solar power. Another example was the citizen engagement booklet that was produced recently with the action cluster on citizen focus, giving good examples for how to work with citizens, how to do this in a proper way, also respecting GDPR rules, etc. And lastly, the Smart City Guidance Package that was also a product of one of the action clusters. So delving into that, why did we start this work? A couple of years ago, we had the feeling that we were seeing a lot of the same issues popping up every time. But we also noticed that the holistic approach was not so clear-cut. So how do you fill that in practice, and what is it? Is it multiple technologies? Is it working cross-domain? Is it working with different stakeholders, etc.? So in the end, we nailed it down to a couple of aspects that are really often persistent problems in the development of climate neutral and smart city projects at the moment, and that we want to address in this integrated approach. So one of the things is, for example, the political cycle. People start working on a plan, a new coalition, a new council is elected, and maybe the mayor and the vice mayors don't like the plan that was already there, and stop supporting it. So how can you make such plans resilient, because you need to work with a long-term perspective, especially in the field where you are working in district heating. You have very, very long times for a return on investment. So it's really important to have a continuous support for those plans while you are preparing them and implementing them. It's also a big problem that if such plans are started, usually it's not within one department of the city administration. So you have different departments to work with, and that easily ends up in, for example, a kind of internal power struggle, like who is dealing with what, and who is the boss on this specific project, or a lack of cooperation, etc. And this is really not beneficial, but it's also not only a problem within city administrations. You also can see it within companies where people with different backgrounds have to work together. It's not easy. People speak different languages. People have different responsibilities and mandates. And how do you bring these things together? Linked to that is also that for many of those plans, it's not possible anymore to do them in a, let's say, more old-fashioned way, where the city develops a plan, procures it, and then the job is done. usually you need collaboration with business partners, you need collaboration with the citizens, they have to approve it, they have to go for it, and sometimes also co-finance or accept higher costs for more sustainable solutions. So you also see that a lot of people often have a different piece of the puzzle. So how do you bring these pieces together, and how do you organize this collaboration within all the stakeholders in the city? And lastly, not everybody think it's very important. You have to also engage people. They might have different priorities, and especially if you are dependent upon other stakeholders for approval, be it let's say an adjoining civil urban service like a utility or something like that, or be it the tenants in your house, you have to work with people who might have different opinions and different opportunities, and also different ideas about solutions, which also might be very beneficial to a project if you could harvest those. And lastly, we also observed that the business cases and the financial aspects are often coming in very, very late. So the plan is developed, the contours are set, and then people are thinking, okay, now we need to finance it, while it would have been better to have this integrated from the start, because the design and the architecture of your plan has to go hand in hand with addressing the financial aspects. So we defined 5 aspects that would be very important to take on board in this integrated approach. So really reckon with the life cycle of the built environment, because you're talking about investments that will be there for decades, and so you have to every time to make the right choices within the political cycle to contribute to the longer term perspective. You also have to develop this multi-sectorial perspective, cross-domain working, multidisciplinary working, and choose the right vehicle for that within a city administration to overcome the siloed thinking or lack of collaboration, and to make really a good group that can take the responsibility for realizing the plans. You also have to work with your citizens and with your local businesses and with your research institutes. Especially the research institutes can be very nice to have them on board. Often they are a very trusted partner, and they can do, for example, some calculations. They can do some scenarios and see what are the best options, or they can moderate these processes. So there are a lot of good examples of that. So to take on board everybody for these co-creation processes where needed is really a key element in the integrated approach. And lastly, you also need to integrate the financial picture from the start, as I said, and also maybe look at other benefits than financial ones, specific co-benefits that can be also very important for people. We have seen good projects where people accepted higher costs if, for example, there would be more comfort or there was an investment also planned in public space. So these 5 elements are really important. And then we thought, okay, how can we deal with them? What should we do with them? And then we thought maybe we should make a kind of some package, a kind of guidance, and we can call it, well, integrated planning and implementation for dummies. But of course, smart cities and dummies, that's it's a bit at odds with each other. But it could be a nice idea to really make an easy, accessible document, a kind of self-help guide that you can take and to get yourself introduced into the topic and know what you can expect if you are working on the development of plans. Also, because we saw that usually city administration staff is under real-time pressure, and people don't have the time to go to the internet and look at a lot of interesting projects that have been done. And it's very difficult to free up the time for that. So we thought maybe we can make something that is like pointing people in the right direction where they can find more detailed information about specific topics. We also noticed that that the ISO standards that are in place, it's very good work, but many city administrations perceive them as quite heavy, because especially on let's say the monitoring part, they can be a bit let's say consuming resources with many indicators, etc. It's a very good method. The whole smart city guidance package and also the summary we made are fully aligned with ISO standards, but the application of standards themselves, that was a signal we got back from many cities, are a bit sometimes seen as too complicated. Of course, don't let that deter you from using them. They are there for a purpose and they are very useful, so I don't want to say that, but we really wanted to focus on providing a really an easy accessible entry point with language that everybody could follow. And also one last thing, we also saw there were many great projects out there, and that there are by the day we're getting more fantastic projects, and it's very good that all this information can be found, all these examples can be found on the Smart Cities Marketplace. But we also saw that it's often very difficult to upscale and to replicate the good things that have been done, the successful recipes in the city itself, but also at other places. So we also thought, how can you include not only the financial aspects more from the start, but also the replication aspects? Because if you have these replication aspects on board, you might also do other plans. If, for example, you know, you have a lot of specific buildings or you have specific infrastructures in your cities, you can capitalize on that by already thinking bigger than the project you are working on. And then later it will be easier and less costly to do the same recipe in other parts of the city. So this replication we felt was needed also to be addressed really much better in any methodology. Already by thinking about it from the start, this is already really an improvement, and not doing the project and then thinking how to replicate. So as I said, it's we produced a document with a lot of help from other people. We had nearly 100 parties that helped us in the end: city administration, consultants, solution providers, other businesses, a lot of research, city networks. They all helped us to develop this and put it together. So I really think it's a joint effort. And if you look at what is in there, it's really more about a recommended process than about the technologies. We don't say to you, you should use this technology or that technology or do this or that. No, we help you to find the right options for yourself by offering this very generic method that you then can attune to your own needs and wishes. Eelco, Jorg and I also worked on a summary. This summary was produced a few months ago. And in the summary, we also added some additional information, especially on the financial aspect, because that's more the strength of Jorg and Eelco. So we are very lucky with them to have them on board in the team and to tap off their knowledge and integrate it in this new version, this new summary. That's a smaller document than the other one, because that's nearly 200 pages. Okay, then for whom did we make it? We focus mainly on local governments. and so the city administration and the staff, so that can be the political level, but can also be heads of unit, advisors, for example, to the mayor's office, other local authorities, practitioners, project managers. We noticed that sometimes project managers are there who really are very good in managing the projects, but they don't have that much background in climate neutral cities or in technologies or in smart cities, and they feel a bit handicapped by that. So they can also use this to get acquainted much better with the things they can expect when managing the project. But we also have a secondary target group, because we think it's very important to work with the partners in your, what we call the local ecosystem, your key allies, the people that can help the city administration to reach its targets. And that can be the real estate developers or the facility managers, the owners of buildings and infrastructures, energy network operators, transport operators, but also citizens, tenants, local businesses. They are the strategic allies because they have a say, and they also can contribute, or they own. So you need a common operational picture to proceed with the plan. And lastly, we are perfectly aware there are a lot of enablers. You have a lot of advisors, architects, consultancy, banks, etc. But we focus mainly upon the first group and a bit on the secondary group. So the people that work with the city to achieve the plans. Okay, and if there are any questions, by the way, just pop in, because I forgot to say I would like to make it really a bit interactive, and I also plan to have some time for Q&A after the presentation. Just to give you a very brief glimpse how it has been developed. So where did we get all this material? We started with workshops in the Smart Cities Marketplace. We did quite a lot of them. Then we did a very extensive desk research on the examples of smart technologies and climate neutral technologies that are in the former SCIS and now Smart Cities Marketplace database. So there are many projects there that are well described. So I really can recommend you to go there and scroll a bit and look at inspiring examples that you can find there. So we did a lot of desk research. Among others, among those examples, that were a lot of project deliverables of innovative projects that had been done, or other examples that we came across. But it was also the interviews that we did. We did about, I think, a bit more than 31 interviews with project managers of smart city and climate neutral projects. We asked them, what are the problems you encounter? How do you deal with them? What would you recommend to others? And any other advice. So we did that anonymous, because if we put people's names on it, they were only saying what they thought they were required or expected to say. And we really want also to get more grip on the things that are going wrong, because they offer the potential for improvement. So this was done with a small group at NTNU, my former employer, Norwegian University of Science and Technology, that made available a postdoc researcher that helped me and the other people in the initiative and in the action cluster to work with, because we also worked with JPR Urban Europe, Sensei Nalek Etsy representative, and other people helped us to develop and also contributed in text. For example, some leaders of the action clusters and many project managers of smart and climate neutral projects. So we collected a lot of information on the needs, the experiences, also asked people what are the best practices. We also included some best practices from Celsius One project, so this was really nice. But we also asked people about failures, things that were going wrong, and asked them to mention specific examples. So then we had a lot of material on the desk and how to organize that in a good way. So we discussed things like, for example, the plan, do, check, act. This is the policy cycle approach. This is very recognizable for many cities and for many people working with cities. And we thought that was a really good approach. We also had quite intensive discussion with the European Energy Award. That's an association of, I think, about 1,200 cities at the moment that are working together to develop good energy action plans, and that give each other how to say, they give each other a kind of assessment, like, okay, have you done it right or not? And the best ones are awarded with a real award. So this is really a nice element, but they also work with specific roles and a team in the city with specific roles that help them by technical assistance. So there were a lot of good ideas in that, and a couple of these ideas we hoovered up and included in the Smart City Guidance package. And as you can see, the European Energy Award works with 6 areas for where you can work on development and spatial planning strategy, mobility, internal organization within cities, and with for example, local government-owned companies, community and cooperation, the waste part, supply and disposal of waste, very important, of course, also for the field you are working in, and municipal buildings and facilities. And they exist already for, I think this year, 25 years. So they have a lot of experience. That the examples they provided were really inspirational, and we included them in the guidance package. So they start with high level commitment, then forming a specific team, and then developing this energy policy program, implement projects, and do the certification and awarding. I forgot to mention that they also work with certification, which also works very well to raise the quality of plans and strategies. So we found this very inspirational, took that as a basis, and started to organize the material we had collected with that. So we ended up with 7 stages because we noticed that although the European Energy Award methodology is very nice, we also saw that we really need an explicit stage to develop a vision if a vision, a good overall vision in the city, is not in place. And this vision can also be a sustainable energy climate action plan that's signed for the Covenant of Mayors. It can be also an overall city vision. It can be an energy or sustainability strategy. So it comes in many tastes, but we saw that we needed to add an explicit stage preceding the plan, do, check, act, because this is really where you have to start aligning people and get their buy-in for the plan. So we also noticed that there was actually a bit of a stage in between the vision and the plan, where you have a kind of vision that shows, okay, I want to go there. These are my main targets. This is what I want to achieve. But in between that, usually there was not so much attention for how to start preparing projects and plans in practice. So there was a kind of link that was missing, and we call this link decide and commit. Because also for developing a good plan, you need resources, and often the city administration cannot do this fully on its own. So they need the help of others to develop this plan in a good way. But the others also have to commit themselves. And to make this really explicit, you need a kind of link between the vision stage, which is of course always sketching a nice picture, and let's say the very on the ground work you have to do when you are really preparing what you are going to do and develop the plan. So we also added an explicit stage for the replication and scale up, because if you have projects and you have a portfolio of projects, in the end it would be good to enlarge the scale. Not many projects are immediately at the full scale of the city. I can imagine that for district heating and cooling, that's more the appropriate scale level. So probably you are a bit more of an exception, but especially when working with neighborhoods, with building blocks, it's often on a smaller scale level. And then you see a lot that there are really good examples, but once the project is done, the degree of replication is a bit disappointing. So how to overcome that? So we thought it was also good to include this when you start developing your plan. Already think about the replication, how to do this, and we made use of some outcomes of JPI Urban Europe projects that had delved into this topic. And as said, this methodology is fully aligned with the ISO standard that has been published also in 2019 on sustainable planning for cities. So how does it look? Now, you all received the material, but I will explain it a bit. So you have those 7 stages, and per stage you have a checklist. Sounds a bit childish, but for most people this worked very well, and they really asked us to transform the material into checklist, because they thought it was much easier to follow and also to structure your work. Of course, it's not cast in iron, so if you have done a step already, you can skip this, or you can make use of a plan or a project or a policy that has already been implemented, or a thing that has already a technical solution that has been implemented. Of course, you can make use of that and build upon that. So it's not cast in iron. It's only meant to give people a generic framework where they can start with and tune it and tweak it to their own situation. So how is it structured, the checklist? Well, we have a central question for each stage. And for example, for this vision stage, the central question is, how do we see the city in the future? How do we see the city in 20 or 30 or 50 years? Where do we want to be then? Because often there are also a lot of other targets that are linked to the energy domain, for example, employment, for example, the quality of housing, etc. And it's good to start from an overall vision that's already in place, and maybe also dealing with those aspects. Then you have really a checklist, like, okay, I can tick the boxes if I've done that. And these checklists that are a couple of to-dos, and each to-do says, okay, now it's good to do this activity. Now it's good after that you should do that action, and all these things build upon each other and are in a particular order. But of course, you can tweak it, and if you want to do things in another order, that's totally fine. And if you want to pick out elements or simplify it, that's also fine, of course. It's also up to you. It's your plan that you have to feel comfortable with and have the ownership of in your city. Then you see after each to-do, you have output. And for example, for the vision stage, that's the priority in the long-term objectives for smart sustainable development that are laid down in the vision. To the upper right, you see tools. So we have a couple of suggestions for tools. It's a bit difficult to read here, but you have the material also in your email box. And for example, tools for this stage can be a SWOT analysis, a World Cafe, scenario planning, a maturity analysis, brainstorming in the workshop, the logical model, are all kinds of tools to work with this material and that you can apply during those different stages. There are also a couple of relevant standards, and we have mentioned them here, and you can check them out and see if they are useful for you and your situation. For example, the standard I already mentioned. So if you look at this, you see that you have a couple of steps. I won't go through all the things in detail, but basically during the vision stage, you define your challenges, but also your opportunities. You take stock of what you already have, the contexts that are already there, the people you should need to talk to, and you start organizing the local ecosystem. Then in the local ecosystem, the ones that are relevant, of course, for the type of plan you have in mind or the type of strategy that you want to develop, you brainstorm, you develop some ideas, and then it's good to explore existing legislation and commitments, because often cities have already a lot of commitments to do specific things. For example, they have also committed to a sustainable urban mobility plan where there are already a lot of mobility efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emission and air pollution, or they have a sustainable energy and climate action plan they are working on. So there might be already a couple of commitments that are there, and also legislation might have an influence on the things that you are considering after the brainstorming with your local stakeholders. And then with this information on the legislation and commitments, it might be that some ideas are not such good ideas anymore, so they have to be dropped, and other ideas might become more promising because they fit within things that are already ongoing, that the city has already committed itself, so you can create mass and find synergies. And then lastly, you capture this vision and put it down in a document that's available to others. So basically, every stage is structured like this. The decide and commit stage is very much focusing on ensuring the commitment for starting the preparation and later implementation of the strategy or the plan. And also does already a kind of analysis of which ideas are that came out of the brainstorming or of World Cafe or whatever has been done. There's already a bit of ranking of the most promising options, of the most viable and feasible options in that respect, also in terms of finance. And we had a colleague from Technical University in Delft, and he always had a very nice example. He said, technically it's possible to build a bridge of gold, but not many people will do it. So this was really a nice example of things that are technically possible, but maybe in reality too costly to realize. So you also start with risk assessment. You also consider the impact that your plan might have locally, the positive impact, but also the negative impact, of course. And you also see what are already ongoing projects where I could team up with, or where I could link to. During this stage, of course, there are also a couple of moments where there will be reconnected to the stakeholders to discuss with them, are we on the right track? Is this a good plan? Is this a good option? Is this acceptable to you or not? So after doing this decide and commit, where it's really about how are you going to meet those long-term objectives that came out of the vision, and you develop a kind of mini strategies per objective or mini policies. You have a kind of action plans coming out of this with topics and options and ideas that are ranked on their viability and feasibility. And also maybe already some topics where you could do some subcontracting. Then chapter 3 is really about preparing the plans. So it's good to set some concrete targets to start with that. And then you start exploring the state of the art of the technologies and the options or the solutions that you might want to do. It could also be non-technological things, for example, specific ideas of setting up a living lab with your stakeholders or around mobility as a service or something like that. So it could be all kinds of things there that you do, but you have to check what is the state of the art and what are the feasible options in our case. And you discuss this again with the stakeholders. You try to visualize them again, see what is the impact, and in the end, you try to rank things and assure approval and commitment. Oh, I see here is yeah, I see some text hiccup here. Yeah, sorry for that. So in the end, you have a there of course the plan is coming out of it, and you can start with the implementation.
Judith,
Yes.
sorry, you have 2 questions from
sorry, yeah, I
Magnus on
can't see
the
that.
chat. Yes, if you
Yes, I
could.
can't see that. So okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, dear Judith, or I could suggest that Magnus do the question
Yes,
directly
please,
to
go
you.
ahead, Magnus.
Hi, Judith. Magnus here from IMCG and Celsius. Thank you for a great presentation. I'll just pushing questions down the line as they pop up. So I thought maybe there were a question Q&A afterwards, but
yeah,
this is what I have anyway, which you can touch base on later on if it's of interest. What I'm thinking is, in what areas did you find the most best learning sort of and failures of good relevant demonstrators not being developed and deployed? You know, from in all those great interviews, where did the cities or municipalities see, where did the stumble, in what area? And my second question was, did you see any differences between large cities and small cities turning the vision into plans and execution of plans? Because sometimes you need to travel from the city hall to different own companies which need to execute. For instance, in Gothenburg, we have the city hall having presenting the vision, but they need to be executed by the transport organization of the city, or the so that could be, if it's a large city, they are dispersed, and if they are small, they're maybe under the same roof. And it was just questions.
Yeah, coming back to your first question, I think for the failures, we saw that there was, it could be, I wouldn't say there were projects that were total failures, but there were projects.
I call it just learnings.
Yeah, no, what you could see that sometimes it was taking very, very long to get the commitment of the stakeholders on a plan. So it was really years, 5 years or something like that. And a really long time before a plan could take off. And you also, and then often that was because people did not agree, or they were not consulted, or they came in at a very late stage, or one example, people started the plan, and then one company had a very big stake in that, and the company was reorganized, and they thought the plan was not so interesting anymore. And this was a disaster for the city, who had reckoned on this company to perform the plan according to what they agreed. So they wanted to open the contract. Yeah, this is really not good. You also could see some plans getting delayed in let's say the implementation phase, because a lot of things had not been done up front. For example, consulting the owners of the buildings, or in a proper way. In a proper way, I mean, not putting people in a room just saying, oh, we plan to do this, and bye. That's not a proper engagement, of course. So then often you see that later there's a lot of resistance, and people say, no, we don't like the plan, we don't want it, or we are not, we have not been involved in it, and we don't approve. And it can be for a lot of reasons. So This you also see. So I wouldn't say that projects are failing totally. I haven't heard much about that, but I heard a lot about considerable delays in all of these stages or very limited replication. Concerning the difference between bigger cities and smaller cities, I think it's a very varied picture. There's a lot of different situations. You have big cities who have organized it very well. They have organized a good vehicle like a public-private partnership that's working with it. Or you have also big cities where people, different departments simply cannot find each other. So, and at the other hand, you see smaller cities having maybe less resources, but being often much more agile than you would expect, and being, let's say, more better organized because they are all next to each other because the departments are not so big. So that's also something that we came across. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. And sorry for, we noticed yesterday there was in the figures a bit of a double, but it has been repaired in the material that you are working with. Is there another question?
No, just be aware of the time. Okay,
yes,
at 11
I go
we
on.
need to.
Yeah. Okay. I don't do this in such detail. I just say more what is then done
Thank you.
in each stage. Okay, then the realization of the plans, the do stage. Then you are starting with the team. The resources are allocated, and there's really a detailed plan that then is implemented. So with every step, the plan becomes more detailed in technical terms and in terms of options, what you're going to do. So there, it's also important to organize a kickoff, set up the monitoring process, and start also the access to sharing of relevant information. For example, by an urban platform where people can follow progress, where information can be shared on what is actually done, also with the outside world or with colleagues within organizations. So this can be also very beneficial, and then execute the project. So following progress is really about monitoring. When you are implementing, you take regularly stock of the progress, track the progress. And if there are problems, you organize within the team how to solve it and to get it back on track. So you are in the end able to meet targets that you set at the earlier stages. Act is about the amendments if things go not as expected, if the data show that for example, not the greenhouse gases emissions are attained that were planned, then you have to do something, and in this stage you are making adjustments to the plan and changing the actions, or putting in other resources if that's necessary. Okay, and then lastly, the replication is really about increasing the impact of the project, having it as an amplifier. And there it's very important to think ahead about the business model of future collaboration. If you would do this in other places, how would the business case and the business model look like? To develop already a plan with your key stakeholders, how you would like to collaborate in that case. Is that in a similar way or in a different way? Or is that maybe a more formal way by setting up a kind of company or partnership? And it's also about taking, how to say, considering how the applied technologies, applied things have to be adjusted to be of use in those other situations. And of course, consolidate this so you get a lot of new projects, a bigger portfolio of projects that is then realizing your plan. So I just want to say a bit about things that we came across when we were working with cities. So actually we did 5 test beds in cities. in end of 2018, early 2019. These are all cities that are engaged in the Smart City Lighthouse project as fellow cities. So they are observing the progress that is made, and they are then working with the demonstrated technologies and try to see how they can fit it in their own plans and their own strategies, and then developing, let's say, visions on how to do this in future. So these cities were very interested. They are part of the Lighthouse projects Iris, Ruggedized, and Smart Together. And there we had technology, or the methodology. We had it printed out on large pieces of paper, on A0 or A1, and we had all the different steps there, all the different to-dos, and we asked people to fill in the actions they would like to see at each to-do for their particular city, and then we put that all together. So this was really interesting because there were a lot of different situations. You could see that, for example, in some cases, the local ecosystems were not yet fully organized. Stakeholders, where you would expect that they would have been meeting already, they met each other for the first time. And sometimes that was a bit surprising, but often it was because the people in the city had been very busy with the plan, and they had been so busy with the plan that they simply had not yet thought about inviting the people that they have to engage in its realization later. You also could see that there was sometimes lack of commitment to this preparation phase, like, okay, yes, yeah, it's a good, let's go ahead, but then not really making the investment in time and money to really get the plan or the strategy to a higher level. So this was also something that that you could see quite often. You could also see a lot that there was sometimes a really weak relation between the different parts of the organization, very much siloed. And then, for example, there was one department was working on the Sustainable Energy Climate Action Plan, another department was working on a smart city plan, and another one on the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, but all these things can be linked, and that was not the case. And that was a bit a pity, because then potential synergies were missed. We also came across situations that a lot of visions and strategies were not made instrumental. So there were really good plans, really good visions and overall strategies, but they were not made concrete in actions, and that was very difficult. And as I said, it takes really time to work well across domains and silos. So overall, the conclusion was, this is the very comprehensive methodology. You can tweak it to your own needs. This was appreciated, and it also helps to develop this portfolio of projects. We also noticed stimulates a lot of discussion and interaction. In the test beds we did, people stayed sometimes for 1 or 2 hours longer, because they were in very good discussions with each other on how to become climate neutral and smart. And we also saw that explicit attention for this vision and decision stage really helps to build more long-term resilience in the plan, and that the methodology worked to draw attention to aspects that are overlooked. For example, focusing too much on the technology, not taking costs into account from an early stage. So yeah, I think that was basically it. Yeah, these are a bit where you can find it, but it's also in your inbox, and maybe you had already the time to look at it. So this is a bit where we go in future, but maybe Jorge, we can have 1 or 2 or 3 questions if that's okay with you.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's okay. Yes, that's perfectly fine with me. I would suggest so that if you have any questions, just drop it here. I see that Magnus has another question. If you want to open the microphone and do it yourself, that's welcome. And because I would suggest that we do this quickly, this few questions, then we have a break of 10 minutes and then we go for group sessions. Magnus?
I'm sorry for taking all the air in the question area. All right. All right. I'm one of the designers of some of the smart cities projects. So we design them in development and propose, and we've done so since frame program 5. So this is an area which we live and breathe in. And I would like to have a thought on when we design a winning smart city proposal or bridge proposal or whatever we engage in, we always have an extraordinary push in innovations, team of experts, professors. This amplifies risks. I mean, of course, there are great innovative projects because they're one of a kind or super innovative in one area, technical, business-wise, or whatever. But we have, of course, that team is not the perfect team for replication and upscaling. Then you need to like box it in. So it's a distance from writing the successful application and then making this super innovative proposal in competition with everybody else. Winning that, and they go from those demonstrations in the project and try to replicate and deploy. So they are sort of, I just have what your takings is on that area, because that's induced in just by writing the proposal, answering to the call and try to beat all the competitors. You need to have that kind of angles. What's your taking? Because it's a far distance from a super innovative demonstrator to market. Sorry for that long question.
Yeah. I think it's a bit a difficult question to answer, because what I'm sketching here is an overall framework built on, let's say, the best of all the recommendations we got from other cities to do it. They said, okay, this is a good idea. No, you should not do that. For example, ICLEI, they reviewed this and they said, no, this is not good. And then we made changes. So this is a kind of, let's say, hypothetical ideal way to do it. I can't, of course, cities do things in their own way. And I know your city, it's Gothenburg, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we work with a lot of cities like Utrecht, London, Gothenburg, Stockholm.
Yeah. No, I see what you mean. You always have a balance, of course, between the innovation aspect, the innovative aspects. But for that, I would say, there are also a lot of measures that may be less innovative, but for climate neutrality are very important. So it's all about striking the right balance. And really, there have been studies, for example, about the potential of if you would do everything in a smart way, how much greenhouse gas emissions could you reduce, and these were really promising numbers. But we also know that not all our infrastructures and buildings will be smart tomorrow. So that's also something, I think, where you have to strike a balance between the innovative aspects and, let's say, the more mundane things like thermal insulation, specific appliances, the extension of district heating, making it multi-commodity, those kind of things. Yeah, I find it a bit difficult to answer because I don't know a situation where the university and the researchers had such power, so that they were really driving the project. I see them more as an added source.
Sorry, it's winning the proposal. Driving the project, they don't. But to win the proposal, you need to.
Definitely.
And whatever you present need to be infused or need to be implemented in the project. So that's the way that means that you create a lot of variables just to having the best of the best or first of a kind or something like that. So that's sort of just by writing the proposal to be in a position to have a high mark and win. You need to have a excellence level which is a 5 out of 5, and then that should be transferred into an impact, which
Mhm.
works. And yeah,
Yeah, but
sorry,
yeah.
now I'm taking all the
No,
air.
no, I short reaction to that.
Mhm.
But this is more my personal opinion. Of course, the demonstrators that are funded by EU projects, that's really important because they show it's possible. So Celsius project, the Smart City Lighthouse project, everything that has been done in Concerto, all very important because it shows to others that it can be done. But in the end, of course, it should also be doable without a subsidy, without the EU. So it should stand on its own feet. And that's where Jorge and Ilko come in, because then it's about the business case, the business model, and how do you link it to the funders and the financiers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice introduction for me to jumping in, Judith.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, because I would suggest for us to keep the time that we have, a short break, 7 to 10 minutes break, just for you to grab some coffee and see your email. Elko, maybe it's good for you to set up the scene that what we will do on the next phase before we go for this break.
Absolutely, yeah, that's perfectly fine, George. So indeed, so also building on Magnus's remarks and questions is so the whole rationale of this masterclass is really to be able to create a funnel of mature bankable proposals following innovations, if you like. So what we will do after the break is actually a first exercise. I suggest that we take 45 minutes for that exercise in 2 groups to do basically like a little self-assessment on where you are with your city or your case study in relation to the Smart City Guidance Package checklist. So it's a very simple self-assessment check, and to see how mature you are. So and then on Monday, what we can we'll do then is to see how big the gap is towards creating such a bankable proposal. Because what we find in the marketplace, in all honesty, is we get quite a few what people believe are bankable proposals, but actually are not bankable proposals as such, because they're a long way away from what investors want to see, and probably also are willing to review in the first place. So what we want to do is to prevent offering proposals to our investor networks and then feel a little ashamed by the, well, let's say the quality compared to the standards they adopt. And there are different standards compared to what an easy review panel might have in terms of an innovative proposal. They might even be completely different. So we're working in this masterclass towards assessing maturity of your, let's say, your smart city / climate neutral city framework, and then zoom into the maturity you could create in terms of a bankable project proposals within that framework. So the next exercise is really to do a self-assessment of where you are compared to the Smart City Guidance Package. And then on Monday, we will continue to do that self-assessment and maturity checks towards a bankable proposal within that framework. So indeed, as George suggests, let's reconvene at 11:15 Central European time. So after your coffee and your email. In the meantime, Emilia has offered to send out our little self-assessment tool by email to all the participants, because what we find is we can't share that through Zoom. And then we break up in 2 arbitrary groups. One group is being supervised by George and Leandro. The other group, Judith and myself, will see to. Basically, it will be like a quiet self-assessment exercise, and we'll be there to help you. And then at 12 o'clock CET, we'll reconvene and have a discussion. And then at 12:30, interestingly enough, we have a guest speaker from a rather small town in Belgium, who have indeed created this integral vision on becoming a smart city and combining several types of technologies, but also interventions with their citizens to create an energy system of the future. So they're combining wind power and also with the district heating network as well. So it's interesting to see that you don't need to be a big city to create these things in practice. So that's what we close off for today. And we'll give you some homework as well for the Monday. So that's the plan. Bob is officially you're the second alderman of the city of Eeklo. It's not Ilko, but Eeklo. And Eeklo is, if I'm not mistaken, right in the middle between Bruges and Ghent, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Entre les tours de Bruges et Gand, like Gabriel once said.
Nice, nice. And we've asked Bob to tell a little bit about the journey the city of Eeklo has gone through to create, let's say, a vision on an integral, let's say, energy system for the city, and then within that ecosystem address some of the main projects therein, and then maybe focus also, because we have a group that is really interested in the district heating element of it, also talk about that element, how that is addressed or being addressed in the city of Eeklo. And maybe then in closing, having some lessons learned around, okay, I would never do this again, or if I only knew this, then if that's okay with you, Bob. Yeah?
Yeah, perfect. I'll do as I'm told.
All right, okay. So with no further ado, I want to give you the floor. I'll switch off my at least I'll mute myself at least, and probably also switch off my camera just to save some bandwidth as well. But we'll be here, no problem.
Okay, and I'll
if you want to share your screen, that's possible through the controls on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see those, Bob?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Something is happening. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, can everybody understand me? Or at least hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly.
Yes.
Perfectly.
All right.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks. So I'd like to start off with the idea if you've ever considered energy as a local product, because up until only 7 generations ago, all energy used to be local. Right. I'm just trying to, yeah, okay. So if you look at the whole evolution of energy, you can say that what is energy? Energy is a way of having or of enabling us to do labor, whether it's through biomass or through mechanical energy. Actually, all energy once was local. And you could say that these energy systems evolved depending on their surrounding. If you go way back, hunter-gatherers were able to harvest up to 5,000 kilocalories per day from their environment. And when this went on until the end of the last ice age, this grew to 8,000 kilocalories. The agricultural revolution enabled us to have to go or to organize ourselves to harvest 30,000 kilocalories from the surrounding. But what we saw from this agricultural revolution until the industrial revolution is that this was more or less the organic ceiling of what was possible for one person to get from his surroundings. But then suddenly we discovered fossil fuels, which in just 7 generations changed the whole perspective of how we look at energy. Energy grew from a local product to a global product, and lots of interesting also societal things happened. We became a capitalistic system, democracy evolved, nation states evolved. So it's very strange to see that in this short period in history, all these interesting things became possible because of, or with one of the reasons, the way we collect energy from our environment. And then, at this point we're at the whole transition, how to switch from fossil fuels to renewables. And one of the very interesting things is also how we will organize ourselves to make sure that the things that we or the good things that we came up with in the past 7 generations, that they don't get lost in the process of having this energy transition. And that is actually what we are trying to do in ECLO. Because if you look at just the EU or Belgium, if you see how much money we spend for the import of fossil fuels every day, every year, we come up with like a quite staggering number. For the EU, every day, 1 billion euros is transferred to not, let me put it safely, the most friendly regimes or Western friendly regimes. For Belgium, it's 20 billion euro each year. And for our little city in Eeklo, 20,000 inhabitants, that is also, it's 40 million euro each year that we pay for the importation of fossil fuels. And if you put it into perspective of inequality, you could say that people with a lower wage are actually having to work more for this import. People with low wages you could say that their labor or what they make in 20 days is paying for their annual fossil fuel bill, while people with a higher income are paying for their fossil fuel bills with only 10 working days. And it's very important to make this division, because it tells a lot with who's working for who and where the money goes. And well, it's not only the money, but it's one of the elements. So one of the things we did different in our city, in Eeklo, is that we approached the whole energy transition story as something else, as a complete vision with in which 4 elements are key. This is ownership of the local community, participation of the local community, making energy again a part of our identity as a city, and of course keeping the added value of this energy transition local. And this is an image, I always put this in any presentation I can make, because these 2 gentlemen on the right of me, they actually started the whole process already 20 years ago. Some civil servants, Dirk in the middle of the picture, and Jan de Pauw from EcoPower, the large, already now the largest cooperative in Belgium, on the right. And they started with a story of building 3 wind turbines in Eeklo through the philosophy of direct participation. And direct participation meant that all the inhabitants of our city were able to not only invest in the wind turbines that were built, the first 3 wind turbines that were built on our territory, but they could also have a say in what's happening with the wind turbines. So they could decide whether or not to choose for a high dividend or to have a lower energy bill. And what we saw, and this was really strange, is that this direct participation had an immediate effect on how people looked at energy. They were not simply passive consumers anymore, but they began to think and began this this whole operation of saving energy for themselves. So in only 3 years, the energy consumption of cooperative participants dropped by a half. So if you know that your consumption drops by half, you could say that the 3 wind turbines, the 3 cooperative wind turbines, were actually producing for 6 only after 3 years. But in time, this whole public support, we knew, or we were feeling that the public support for new wind turbines was beginning to crumble, also due to regulation on a higher level that was actually contradictory with our positive findings. And so chaos reigned. People had the feeling that in every piece of agricultural land, it had the potential that a wind turbine could pop up. So what we gave the people was some sort of spatial security, so that they would know in which areas wind turbines could erect, and in which areas the wind turbines would be excluded or beyond any consideration of getting a building permit. So the red area you see here is in the north of our city, and this is the concentration zone, and it's broad lines or surrounded with an exclusion zone. But of course, this was not the end of our story. It would be a very small and short presentation if it was. But also the wind turbines that would be built there, they would have to fulfill or meet certain regulations, extra regulations, which are above normal building permits and spatial spatial conditions. So what we demanded as a city council in 2014 was that for every wind turbine, 25% of the participation should be opened for the city. So the city should be able to invest or co-invest in every wind turbine. But also a quarter of the wind turbine should be open for citizens' participation. That's on the input side. On the output side, we demanded from project developers that 5,000 euros each year should go directly into an energy fund of the city, and 5,000 euro should go directly into a neighborhood fund. This all just to balance out, to get the costs and benefits a bit more in balance, because what you see if you build a wind turbine is that the benefits are for the people who build the wind turbine on a slot of a few square meters, and it gets erected for construction is erected for 120 meters high, and the whole surrounding have just the visual effect is one thing, but you could also say that the common of wind is harvested only by the first one who gets to claim this this wind turbine, or this right to collect wind energy. And so because of that, because we want to balance these things out, we set up this democratic support model. And where we are now, I'm sorry for the Dutch in this slides, is that at this year, or sorry, last year in 2020, we made it possible that that 22 wind turbines in total were built. And together with solar and heat coupling, we get or we produce in our city 170 gigawatts per hour as a production. But if you put that against our energy use, you see that we're only using in our city 133 gigawatt per hour, which means that from last year on, we had a local and totally green energy production of 130%. This hasn't cost us anything. We did this without big investments of the city, and also without any large how do you say it, civil servants or with large pressure of our administration. It's just about making the framework in which we invited all project developers to come to our city and invest in wind energy and green energy in general, because we want to go further than that. So this is a small overview of what this actually means in financial terms. So one wind turbine, business as usual, only has zero income for the city and zero income for our citizens. The owner of the land gets 25,000, and more or less the project developer gets 250,000. So it's just about having this cost benefit being more in balance. And if you know that in this last wave of wind turbines, 14 were built, you see the direct effect of 14 wind turbines. And of course, especially if you would look at this from a perspective of 20 years, this is a lot of money that either stays local or drifts away. And if you want to build a democratic support for the energy transition, I think it's vital to get also the positive effects of this energy transition visual and tangible for the local community. And so one thing we want to do with the money that we get from from these wind turbines, the benefits of the wind turbine of the wind energy, is to put these in a local climate fund. And a local climate fund in order to speed up the transition and use the turbines that were built in a first wave and second wave of development, actually use them to speed up the energy transition. And this is like a small calculation we made of how much CO2 we could possibly capture in our city. And we see that we actually have a climate positive potential to go to CO2 reduction of 126.5%. If we would succeed in building the wind turbines, having extra biomass, and these are the green the green areas you see on the map, and covering all our roofs with solar, and also investing in a big district heating network. So I'm going to continue for the last part of the presentation with 4 very interesting projects of what we could do with all this money. And actually it's these 4 projects all go in the same direction and fit perfectly in the same vision, that by keeping energy local, you could do really interesting things. One of the things that we came up with is we could actually use this participation of people in poverty to get them a direct reduction of their energy bill with €200 each year. And it's just by cutting out the big energy corporations and the big energy multinationals who give a big dividend to shareholders in well, with us it's mainly in Paris. So by keeping added value local and keeping energy bills low, you could like build a democratic support by showing people on their electricity bill what these wind turbines mean in practice for them. And of course, and that's probably one of the things you're most interested in, we also use this to build a new legal framework for district heating in our city. Because one of the things that we're missing in Belgium and in the north of Belgium is a legal framework for building district heating in the public sphere. So district heating networks in Belgium are still limited to individual projects or like small extensions of historical grids. And so what we did is we put out a public tender for our total our total city or the whole public space of our total city. And we asked, of course, the conditions of again within the philosophy of our energy transition, that direct participation was very important, and Also, the price should be regulated, that it wouldn't cost more than the gas price. And we actually got two partners willing to build a district heating system, which will be the biggest in Belgium, not just by a few meters or by a few kilometers, but doubling the size of like the biggest district heating network currently developed in Belgium. We will connect this not only with our big waste plants in the north of the city. This is just the first phase, but in the future we will decentralize production. So the district heating network will actually also function as like a giant. You could even call it a giant battery for the city, so that the surplus of wind is converted into heat. The biomass will the local biomass will be added value. Also, rests or heating processes in the city of our industry will be injected, and this all to have like a decentralized network of cooling and heating. And of course, it's not only the CO2 story we link this with, but also the financial story. And I think we shouldn't be afraid to implement or put this euro story next to the CO2 story. Another thing that we did is with the similar conditions, with similar approach, is that we instead of having every household decide for themselves, or if solar panels are costs or if they have enough funds to put solar panels on their roof, we actually, through third-party participation, we opened up the possibility, so not the obligation, but the possibility, so every household could get cooperative solar panels on their roofs. So we are now in the first phase of this project, but in the end, also here, it should be possible that solar panels could be constructed on all rooftops in Eeklo. And just like as a last thing, like a last idea, one of the steps we haven't done, we talked with Eelco, we talked yesterday about how to expand the way we approach energy, is also it goes further than just this local approach of cooperative energy. It's about the whole economy. And this is a slide of an area in a neighborhood in Amsterdam, where they calculated for 1,500 households how much money could be kept inside of the local economy, and how much added value, and how much labor or working spaces could be opened up if economy could remain on the local level. So this goes from vegetables, 7 full-time employees, fruit, 6, meat, 4 full-time employees, and yeah, you can go as far as you can or you want with that, especially for low capital goods, and this is very interesting to work with. So to close off, some final considerations. What I would suggest is that we need to rethink the whole energy system and think it's local. Not there's no one solution for transforming or the transition of the energy system. So look for the organic energy DNA of your place. What like before this 7 generations ago, how did your community come up with their energy solutions, and work something out with that as the basis, because it's normally the most logic thing. Another thing I would say, or what I suggest, is to think big. It's not about enabling the energy transition just for the people with or high income people, but what's strong about our story is that we make it an inclusive story of the whole community. So we need to start thinking of how to include also people in poverty, especially people in poverty, not to get the big divide that you see happening elsewhere, that that of the green church and the yellow jackets. So, and of course, and I think you've noticed this throughout the presentation, that energy is also capital, and it's about getting the added value of the energy transition inside of your city and making the effects or the possible effects tangible. So this was it. Thank you. I hope you have a few or you picked up a few ideas and that you can like work things out in your city, because the story of my small city shouldn't be unique. We don't have a lot of we don't have like a big budget of big city. I only have one or not even one full-time employee at my disposal to work all these things out. But it's about like working with what you have, and if you learn how to work with what you have, it's the creativity pops up, and there are always opportunities to get a new energy system for your own local community. So thank you.
I can only say that was great, Bob. So thank you very much. A really inspiring story. And actually on another screen, I was already looking at real estate in Eeklo, whether I could move there. Although my own town is also quite nice. But if there's any questions for Bob, because I think, you know, working from a vision opens certain perspectives. That's what I'm taking from this. It's really great from that perspective. And you don't need to have a lot of resources to make things work. That's also what I'm getting. But the philosophy of thinking local, I'm thinking about your organic energy DNA that, you know, that fits your place literally, is opening up these perspectives, I think. Any questions for Bob or thoughts or additions? I can see Emilia waving there.
Hi, yes, fascinating and inspiring presentation. So thank you very, very much. This is just the Celsius in me. What does your energy company look like? Is it city owned, or is it a big energy company? Because you from the city must have a very tight collaboration with the energy company to be able to put all these things in place.
Mm-hmm. It's not city-owned or state-owned. It's because no, it's not city-owned or state-owned. What we just did is open up a public tender for opening. It started with some small plots of land owned by the city. And later on, it's just about like making regulations for the whole city. So it's not city-owned or state-owned. It's more citizen-owned. So it's a citizen cooperative who's doing most of the projects. But for the district heating network, the investments costs were too high. The technology was too sophisticated, and they joined up with Veolia. And they made a special purpose vehicle, and it's actually also a very interesting side project, because the whole legal process of getting a special purpose vehicle between a big multinational on the one hand and a small cooperative on the other hand, there's actually like trying to combine water and fire, because they have totally opposite business cultures, but actually we were able to make this work because Veolia is also now getting into the process of realizing that they need this local support if you want to that people like cut off their gas, their trusted gas installation. They need to know that it's not just because the prices are equal, but they get extra benefits if they could join and if they can actually own a bit of the district heating network. So the citizen participation is very important, and it's actually really cool to see that we were able to get a citizen cooperative, EcoPower, team up with the big multinational of Veolia.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
Following on that, Bob, what I found interesting in your, as part of the wind turbines, that indeed the business case becomes more attractive if you, for a commercial partner, if you have a democratic model involved. That's the interesting. So it works hand in hand. That's quite nice to see.
Yeah, because if you look at it from the business model, from the even the big multinationals in the whole of Belgium, only 50% of all permits get or of all applications end up getting a building permit. So there's a lot of opposition by the neighborhood. There's a lot of legal fights, and the only ones who benefit from that are the lawyers. And I don't want to criticize lawyers, and they can do a great good, but it's better to avoid them at all costs. And a lot of the bigger companies actually have acknowledged this and went along and with the whole democratic support model, and we were able to finish up the whole project without any legal lawsuits. So all the applications ended up 100% by getting their permits because of this democratic support model.
Excellent. So it's a very good best practice in terms of public acceptance of change, basically. Yeah.
Except our minister doesn't want to see this.
Okay. All right. Questions from the rest of the audience?
How did you get so much support at the local level from people living there?
We've been trying to build support for 20 years. So it's not the results I'm presenting now is a story of 20 years, and it started with 3 wind turbines. And it's about community building, and it's about not only having the added value to your direct circle of cooperatives, but also having this community, like giving talks, having people of the energy corporation have like give presentation days in schools, have organizations, NGOs invited, and business operations invited to these wind turbines, and look at and make them or explain to them what the importance and the possibilities are of the energy transition. So it would be interesting or very convenient to say that it's one thing, but it's not one thing. It's a continued approach of 20 years of giving talks and giving like opening the wind turbines for visits, and it's all that combined. And if you look at our neighboring city, they you know how it goes, the competition between 2 cities, and at the point that we were building 3 wind turbines, they were building 4, and but what they did different was they didn't work with direct citizen participation, but with financial participation, and the added value of the wind turbines was directly transferred. So from the big project developers, they got a bag of money in 2000. I think it was about 200,000 euros, so a lot of money at once. And of course, this money is now already long spent. And what our deal was is that we got 5,000 euro for each turbine each year. So every year again, we get like the notification of with these with a bit of the profits, we are helping people to insulate their houses. We're investing in double glass we're making schoolyards better, or putting solar panels on school roofs. So it's a continuous process, while a lot of companies want to look at public support as like a project up until the permits, and after that they like take their hands off. So this is a very important like switch of or different approach that also big companies should keep focused on.
Thanks, Bob. If we have time for one final questions, and then I guess we have to move over to explaining the homework for the next session on Monday. For that, I will invite my colleague George. So if there's any other questions, somebody?
No, this is Judith. Hi. I think it was really great presentation. Thank you for that. A lot of inspiration, and also good to know that it can be done. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I want to echo that comment. So thank you. Thank you. Oh, just one question. Are you prepared to share your slides with the group?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, that will be great. Yeah, because then we can make that part of the package. Because indeed, that was very interesting graphs, and also the style of presentation was also great. So the random inspirational quote towards the end. Yeah, super. Thank you. Thank you so much, Bob. We will continue with, you can stay on if you like. It's just a bit of homework for the next session, and then I'll ask Georg from the Commission to close up the session. Thanks again.
All right. Super. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Bye-bye.
Thank you. It was really a great presentation, Bob. I really enjoyed it, and I have to admit that I was on the back office changing some emails with Alco saying that it was really a nice presentation, the style and the content. So thank you for that.
Okay.
As regards the homework, there is a homework. So sorry for being the one addressing the bad news. The homework is not very complicated, but what we would suggest you is that I'm sharing now our project intake. This is the kind of form that we have for cities to submit their projects that we will share then with the investors. So we will kindly ask you to try to fill this intake and see whether it's aligned or not, and where are the main gaps that you will find from also from this gap analysis that you have done. Some of you will notice that since you are on a very, very early stage, you probably do not have the information. For those that do not have the information because you are in very early stage, if you want to focus more on the vision, or if you want to focus on steps that are before the step of drawing this intake form, it's up to you. But basically the intake form is not so complicated. We will just ask you for a project description with the focus on the impacts of this project. So a little bit of information about the project, background, what types of technologies or sectors we are talking about. So we can go through different technologies. Most of the cases that from the discussions that we have been having, although it's everyone is talking about district energy, that could mix other things. We saw one case that mix a lot of technologies, so that could be also described. Also, you have some information on the guidance package about the PML, this project maturity level. So it would be good for you to try to check what are the PMLs. The PMLs are 6 and the steps are similar, but it's not related with the steps. So the PML also there is some relation, but it's not exactly the same thing. The PML is the maturity of the project that goes from the idea until the tendering process is ready. And some questions about the impact and investment that you want to see. So we will share this with you. in a while. So it's a little bit up to you to decide whether you want to present about sending a presentation, sorry, to work on the strategy or to work on a specific project. If you find that you want to work on a specific project, you can use the project intake. If you want to work on the strategy, that's also fine. It's a little bit up to you, this homework. What we will do is that next Monday we will come together, and the first point will be on the separate session. So we will be helping you with the work that you have done during this period, this homework. I don't know, Elko, if you want to add something.
I think it's well explained. So do consider that project intake form that we're having. So the more you can fill in there, the better it will be for us to help you prepare for our investor network. So indeed, we don't expect you to be able to complete everything, because it's now, what is it, Thursday, and the next session is on Monday. But try. That's what we're trying to do as well. And again, as George was saying at the introduction of the session, we're here to help you also in between sessions. So also in between the second and the third session, because there's a longer time period in between those two sessions. So indeed, have a look at that project intake form. We will make sure that the slides, as have been presented both by Judith and Bob, are shared with the group, and as well the project intake form. And with that, I want to leave the last 1 or 2 minutes for our sponsor, who is Georg Huben of DG Energy. There he is again. Good to see you, Georg. Did I say George? No. I should have said Georg.
No, as you know, I'm sort of rather relaxed when it comes to pronunciations of my name. I'm not daring to reveal the nickname I'm having in my band, but anyway. So I just wanted to put a bit of a somewhat more high-level closing here. What you experience today is how much knowledge actually there is, and how much experience and expertise there's around. And I should underline what Iriko just said, that we are really there to help you, but it has also another dimension. What you now do within this masterclass, and let's say it may and hopefully serves as the foundation for projects you are intending to launch. We would love to use that to pass the message around, and I would really invite you to do that as well. Because as I said in the beginning, what we do here in somewhat smaller scale will have an impact when we repeat this and talk about it and multiply it and upscale it and replicate it and so on, for the delivery of the Green Deal, and for, let's say, putting it a little less threatening, for the greener future of our cities. As simple as that. Make cities more livable and so on. And you being taking part in this masterclass are, I wouldn't go as far as calling you the guinea pigs of this, but I would say that your efforts in taking part in this masterclass and making it a reality in your specific local boundaries and cities and communities and so on, that's a true future asset. That's something we can really be altogether be very proud of, and that is being turned into a reality. And I would very, very much like to also in the future, brag about that in online conferences and conferences I'm taking part in, and make noise about it. So also with this last word, there's also, of course, the question to all of you taking part in this masterclass, whether we are allowed to use your experiences also to make noise about this masterclass idea. And I truly hope that also in the future, we are going to repeat this, really making it bigger, better also, so based on your experience. So also please report back to us what you found specifically helpful, what you found specifically sort of, not so helpful. And if we can improve that experience, we should do that really. So with this, thanks a lot for being in this masterclass. Thanks a lot for giving the trust in us to help you with your projects. And I really hope and look forward to what's happening in the next session and how we all sort of lay the foundations to really put that into practice and to implement these projects, ideally with the help of our investor network. And yeah, I think with this I stop, because there will be 2 other sessions. We will have plenty of opportunities to exchange. And please do drop me a message, or Ilko and George. I'm happy to sort of get involved if there's a need. So all the best from my little region, from my little office at home here. Take care, stay healthy, and looking forward to the next session. Thank you very much.